As you know, the cost of living is a big issue for so many Canadians.
Housing has been front and center this summer as prices continue to soar.
Rent is up again. It hit a record high in January.
You've heard this before. Canadians are facing a cost of living crisis, and the federal government wants to build homes by the millions. But they say they can't do this alone, and they need cities and provinces to be on board. They created something called the Housing Accelerator Fund. It's basically this pot of money to help municipalities build a lot of homes fast, but it comes with some strings attached.
I mean to pass no moral judgment on a single-family home. I just think it's a foolish rule to have in place that everything else is illegal to build in a housing crisis. To the extent that communities want to receive funding through the Housing Accelerator Fund, particularly medium and large-sized cities, they should know that we have an expectation in our office that they're going to bring to an end exclusionary zoning.
Exclusionary zoning. That's a discussion that's happening across the country and right here in Calgary, where the city's delivered a plan that the federal minister likes. It's part of Calgary's broader housing strategy.
That strategy lays out several dozen actions, one of which is to do a rezoning across the city to something we call RCG in established parts of the city, and then RG in newer parts of the city. And basically what that does is allow more diversity of housing. So different varieties of housing to boost our housing supply and provide housing that's more within the reach of more Calgarians.
We're not talking apartment buildings. We're not talking anything with a lobby. We're talking about homes that face the street.
That's Lisa Kahn. She's a city planner, and she's also the leader of the land use bylaw team. I want to repeat and emphasize something she said. We're talking about homes that face the street. So think townhouses, row homes, and multiplexes. What we're not talking about are condos and apartment buildings. What the city is proposing is something that most Calgarians have heard referred to as blanket rezoning. Let me explain. Drive around Calgary and you see a lot of the same. A sea of single detached homes. By default, 2/3 of Calgary communities only allow for 1 unit per lot. Another 20% allow for up to 2. Think garden suites, basement suites, and duplexes. If you want to build anything more than that, get ready to take your case up with City Council.
Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
It's not the most effective process. Actually, most of these applications get approved, but people who live next door, they like that because it's the one chance they get to tell council to their face how they feel about the development next door. Now, homeownership in this city is high. The highest in the country. Calgary is a city of homeowners, and for many, that's the single biggest asset you have. So this kind of change in a community people have invested in feels personal.
We live in a very private society. We like the privacy of our car versus public transit. We like the privacy of our single family home versus living in an apartment. I mean, that's just the reality. That's our urban culture.
That's the kind of attitude the city is up against. The city was supposed to actually take people through neighborhoods like this one on a walking tour to show them what the change could look like in a community on the ground. And that's what Lisa Kahn was supposed to do. But then things got heated and the city had to cancel these tours.
A lot of things that we've been hearing are around that fear of change. A lot of folks have bought into communities that only allow for single detached dwellings. They've invested in communities. They really want to live there. It's their home. It's where people have raised their children and they've grown up. And so it's really important to them. Some of the fears that we hear is that row houses, which is what we're talking about today, aren't going to be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. They're really going to change the neighborhood. They're going to change the look and feel.
Lisa, walk me through Capitol Hill in the city's northwest. It's an established community with most of the housing here built after World War II. But it's one example the city is using to show what older neighborhoods look like as new homes go up.
Because as you can see, there's a lot of older single detached dwellings that are here, a lot of really loved homes. But as we get closer to the corner, you can see how redevelopment has happened in this community. But it's still happened in a way that's sensitive to the area around it. So for example, This house that's right here, you can see the height is not that much different from the house beside it. There is a bit of a difference, and that comes with time, right? As time changes, people want bigger floors, they want more windows, etc. So we've given a bit more height over the past few years to allow for even things like single detached to go a bit taller. RCG is about low density homes for people. It is about a similar height and a similar context to all of the existing low density homes that are already in communities. Everything around us has gone through that land use process. This project is proposing to get rid of that land use process and put a different zone on the ground that allows for everything from singles, semis, and row houses. It adds that potential for somebody who's looking for a newer home or looking for a new type of home to move into that home while freeing up their existing house that's already there. That existing house might be cheaper, it might be bigger, it might have different qualities to it, but that allows for somebody to then come into that house as well. Which all of this is really about getting at different price points for different Calgarians throughout the city. A lot of our older communities, like you can see right across the street, we have one of these older bungalows. This is still a really functioning house for somebody. And it's really important to still have those in our stock. It's just important to make sure that everybody has that ability to be flexible in their design.
That's how the city sells it, but spoiler alert, lots of Calgarians aren't buying it.
Just say no!
It sparked protests outside City Hall, and inside a public hearing about this is scheduled to span days, with hundreds lining up to speak for and against this plan.
These proposed zoning changes will undoubtedly make life easier for developers, but at what cost and to whom?
The parking makes absolutely no sense.
The rezoning measures on the table today are some of the most important tools at your disposal to address the housing affordability crisis.
Persons with disabilities and seniors have the right to live independently, and Calgary has the opportunity to use blanket rezoning as a tool to reduce the burden.
I purchased my home 30 years ago on the promise that I would be living in a neighborhood that only allows one house per lot. This proposal will break that promise.
It's not about forcing development on people that either don't understand it, don't appreciate it, don't want it.
This is Richard White. He runs a blog called Everyday Tourists, where he talks about tourism, travel, and urban planning. He's not a fan of this plan on many fronts, but mostly how it's dividing Calgarians.
And the sooner politicians and urban planners figure out a way to respect that and work with the public to try to say, okay, yeah, we're not going to build a sea of single family homes, but gradually, and it's gradual density, not gentle density, not hidden density, and all these stupid terms that they have, because people do see this as an invasion of their community.
He's skeptical these changes could really fix the housing trouble we're in.
Well, I do think it's distracting. I mean, the reality is that we do need to be focusing on affordable housing, and affordable housing needs to be defined as those individuals who are paying more than 30% of their income, not just affordable housing for a young professional who has some upside potential and wants to buy a fancy new condo when they could be renting, or they could be buying a smaller condo.
So I asked Lisa, is this the city's big plan to tackle affordable housing? Is it a silver bullet?
It's not just one thing that can happen and overnight affordability is going to change. In fact, RCG is more of a long-term game, right? Doing this redesignation on the ground will have very small impact tomorrow, more impact over a couple years, but really where you're going to see that change is by the next generation. You're going to see that happening where new types of development goes up and more people come into your community, and that community goes through that life cycle.
So, the city is playing the long game, but Calgarians are feeling the cost of living crunch right now. And the question of whether or not the politicians will pass this blanket rezoning policy, that's still up in the air. The city feels the federal government will give them the money either way.
Our application makes mention of potentially looking for a change to zoning so we could deliver units, but the crux of that deal is to say that we will deliver this many units and these are the ways that we will try to achieve that. So we preceded anything that the federal government came out with.
At the end of the day, this is funding the city wants as it tackles a rapidly growing population, and money it needs to help build affordable housing.